Hello and welcome back to the A24 on the Rocks podcast. This is Kelly. Tonight I'm drinking Coppercraft Distillery's whiskey.
Hi, my name's Eric Kiska, and I am also drinking Coppercraft Straight Bourbon Whiskey. I'm back on the Sauce Boys. Up next.
Ooh, welcome back. My name is Cole William Whitlaw Gibson. I am drinking the Prologue by Chapter 7. It is a blended scotch, and it is one of 6,000, which is more than the amount of dialogue in this movie. Up next.
Hey, what up? It's your boy Blaze Fitzgerald Ryan the First, a.k.a. Mr. Simp Your Movie. Tonight I am drinking bleach. It's actually hard. Mike,
doesn't that cure COVID?
I'm doing the Aaron Rodgers treatment. It is actually Mike's Hard Blue Lemonade. Finally, man who needs no introduction.
Good evening, world. My name is Kevin K. Konachek, and tonight I'm drinking Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey to round out all of us drinking brown liquor and Blaze drinking Mike's Hard.
A24 on the rocks.
Let's talk about movies.
I like how a few episodes ago you were worried that people thought you were poor, and now you've just given up and you're drinking.
Oh, you know what? There was the week I did Bullet, and then I looked at my checking account, and I was like, you know what? Let's just
Bullet's
roll.
not even that expensive. You could.
Bullet's like $30 a month.
I bought a pint.
Let's go.
Oh, jeez.
Silly. All right, people. Thanks for tuning in again to this silly little podcast we've created. I hope that it's been a pleasure for your ears. Today we're going to be talking about a 2013 film called Under the Skin. And if I know we always have spoiler alert on all movies, this one especially, just turn back right now if you haven't seen it before, because the more blind you are going into it, I feel the more you're going to appreciate it. That said, before we even get into me talking to what this movie's even about, who knew something about it before we even watched it? Or did anyone go in as blind as possible?
I did.
I
watched
Completely blind.
I think I watched half of this movie when I was kind of drunk like 6 years ago, and I never finished it. And I finished it this time, though. So
I didn't even know Scarlett Johansson was in it till I turned it on and I got excited.
Yeah, I didn't watch a trailer. I didn't do a description. I read nothing. I just went into it just like, okay, let's see what happens.
Okay, so pretty pure eyes going into this movie, other than Eric's drunken half-movie seeing eyes. It was directed by a man named Jonathan Glazer. His background is he made a lot of film and television trailers, pumped out a few short films, made a couple movies, and then did this one. It is about a... Here's our intro. Here's all that you should know before going into it. Is disguising itself as a human female, an extraterrestrial drives around Scotland attempting to lure unsuspecting men into her van. Once there, she seduces and sends them into another dimension where they are nothing more than meat. It is based on a science fiction novel of the same name, and it stars, of course, Scarlett Johansson. Came out the same week as Captain America the Winter Soldier, which she also starred in. And that really tells you what time this movie came out and what we were all doing with our lives, because you probably remember about that movie coming out. Was a box office failure. Its budget was about twice as much as it earned, budget of about $13 million, earned worldwide $7.2 million. However, critically well received, and I think it has a bit of a cult classic kind of following among the sci-fi heads. But enough about me talking now. I want to hear just some first thoughts, and we're going to go with Cole first because I know you like sci-fi.
Yeah, so I'm a big sci-fi guy. The intro was very interesting. I kind of liked the intro going into it. Again, this was another film where I started off immediately pausing it and checking my volume because it was dead quiet for far too long. So I was trying to figure out if I had my volume on. But overall, the vibe of this movie was very, very well done. Good cinematics, good feels, good vibes. Made me feel a lot of things. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, let's talk more on that intro. I think it was Blaze who said something about 2001: A Space Odyssey. Do you want to talk more about that?
Oh, just again, I think this movie as a whole, like just going into it, I think it does so much with the visuals and the sounds. Where if you've ever seen Stanley Kubrick's, and I believe Arthur C. Miller wrote the book, if I remember correctly. But 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is basically a visual and sound orgy for a couple hours. And I got a lot of like the same, like we talked about, Eric talked about homages in Enemy, and I felt like a direct correlation, especially in the beginning of this film, between this movie, what this director was going for, and with direct homages to 2001: Space Odyssey and then Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I felt like the ideas were ripped directly from those classics, and they put a modern spin on it, and he made his own themes and stuff about it. So like Cole said, the sound was just like, when I first turned it on, I thought my TV was broken because it was dead silent. And then the cool visuals where they compared and contrasted the spaceships, and I guess her eye being made. I kind of like, there's, again, going back to Enemy, I kind of feel for Kevin and Cole, because I went to this one blind, and I feel like just as confused as they were when they watched that for the first time. So I knew I was going to ask a lot of existential questions. Most of that haven't still not been answered. Yeah, I got a lot of like just cool sound and visual vibes.
Quick fact check, so the sci-fi nerds don't shoot us in the head. Arthur C. Clarke wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. Arthur Miller was the writer of The Crucible. Not trying to be pretentious, Blaze. I'm just trying to fact check here. So.
Listen, I don't write notes. So I just go off.
And with discussion of this film, I think we can't avoid pretentiousness, and I'll get more into that as we go on. But just as a teaser for what I'm going to get into. Kevin, I want to hear your first thoughts on the movie.
Absolutely. So I guess I lied a little bit when I said I went to this blind. I did read the description on Showtime, which is as follows, because I think it's kind of relevant to this conversation. A voluptuous woman of unknown origin, Scarlett Johansson, roams the highways in search of isolated or forsaken men, luring a succession of lost souls into an otherworldly lair. They are seduced, stripped of their man, etc., etc. My point is I had zero, and I mean zero, thought throughout this entire 2-hour process that this was an alien.
Really?
And I know that's weird to say, and I know that's super weird. Like, how could you miss that? And it might have been the timing of me watching it, me kind of just having it there, and I must have missed the right cue. Whatever it may be. So I watched this whole lens with just kind of looking at her from a character's standpoint of maybe a creepy serial killer who's not quite all together there or having some weird vibes. But then when I discovered it, of course, following it, I went, that makes perfect sense, and enjoyed the movie a lot more, even though I wasn't really paying attention or wasn't understanding it as I could have been during it. So that being said, I really do appreciate it in general. I thought it was an excellent film. The cinematography, as Cole alluded to, was fantastic. That opening shot of that lonesome highway, just kind of snaking.
Oh, that really motorcycle
cool.
shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was just a really visually awesome way to bring you in. And I know we talk about music too, and I love that you felt uneasy right away with the screeching strings and the way that the orchestral movement put you in that mood for the entire movie. And I found it interesting that she had a specific theme every time, basically, that she was doing, her killing or her luring. There was that specific sound that pretty much accompanied that, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I'll be completely honest, I was ignorant for the most of it, but I still enjoyed it, and now I enjoy it even more knowing what I know afterwards.
That's interesting. And the description that you read and the description that I read sound like two entirely different movies.
That's a cool point.
I definitely wrote
I was
the
gonna
one
say.
that Kevin read, for sure.
Actually, yeah, Cole wrote the Showtime one where it said voluptuous woman.
I did find
Eric,
that a little odd.
I want to hear from you next, but I do want to just touch on the music and the background really quick. It was composed by Micah Levy at only age 26. Before doing this movie, they produced experimental pop music, And the director asked them kind of questions such as, imagine when you tell someone a joke and it's not very good and their reaction is a bit stifled. Make a song that sounds like that. And that was their prompts going into it. But that said, I just wanted to make note of that because it was a really well-received soundtrack. But Eric, I want to hear your initial thoughts on this film.
So I guess maybe I had some help because I saw part of this before, but when it started out, it definitely gave me very Stanley Kubrick vibes, the symmetrical shots of landscapes. And then I think I pretty much got it right away that this was the alien getting into the skin of the human, and the eye was, the eye developing, the eye of the human, and also all of the gibberish turning into English. That was the female learning the English language. So that was, kind of cool how they just showed her slowly developing not slowly, actually, pretty quickly in terms of learning a language, but pretty quickly developing the English language.
Yeah, I thought that was I liked that part a lot. It was really engaging hearing the language developing. So I want to get into some questions just about the story, I guess. Basically, it's clear that our protagonist has some kind of mission. And I want to hear, let's go Blaze first. What you thought her mission might be maybe in the first half of the movie and how it might have changed.
Boy. Why don't you ask me the meaning of life? So, I guess as straightforward as I can be, I believe she was as part of an alien race that was sent to Earth to hunt humans for, their meat, because they stripped them of their meat, and they went through a red corridor or something like that, and then also maybe their souls or their essences, because what's left, just a quick setup, is that she lures men back to place and they get engulfed by this black goo because men are stupid and they'll do anything for sex, apparently, is what the allegory is. But in a more literal sense, their bodies get consumed by this black goop or energy or something, existential dread, H.P. Lovecraft, etc. So her mission is to either provide food for her race of aliens, or maybe human souls are like energy or something to them, because I think there's something to do with those, whatever grotesque things are left over from the goop. That's her mission.
For sure. Does everybody kind of agree with that, or do we have other thoughts on the mission?
When I was watching the movie, I did not think they were harvesting the meat. I thought they were harvesting the skin, because I was like, under the skin, there just needs body suits for all the aliens, and that's what they were doing. But I did look into the book and read some of that stuff, and it was more akin to what Blaze was talking about. But during the movie, I was like, she's just collecting more bodies so they can put more motorcycle people out and slowly invade the whole world. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I was, I guess, a little mistaken.
Yeah, the book, apparently, human meat is a delicacy to these aliens, and so they're basically taking them, grinding them up, and eating them.
Nice.
Yupper. So Blaze nailed it.
Yeah, that was absolutely my
good.
impression, for sure.
Okay. It's that scene of the meat grinder of the just rolling
Very
right
Pink
down
Floyd,
the tray.
another brick at the wall. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, they're
Yep, that's
right.
what
That
we
is
had been
very
discussing.
reminiscent. Yeah.
The other, I want to say, character in the movie is this motorcyclist. Kevin, what do you think that the motorcyclist is?
I think he's a handler, a caretaker, a babysitter, so to speak. I think that the first woman that we see when the movie opens up, the one that he picks up from the ditch, I think that's who Scarlett Johansson's alien is replacing. I think that's the person who failed at her mission, and now this next alien is coming in to replace that individual to attempt to do the same thing. This motorcyclist is there to make sure that she's, tracking down the meals, and most importantly, that she's not exposed too quickly. We see that obviously with the deformed individual who comes back and he's waiting for him when he comes across the fence, and he's very much there to make sure that her cover's not blown and that she does what she's supposed to do. So I guess a manager, a boss, just someone in charge.
Yeah. Was there any motorcyclist scene Blaze, you go ahead. And then
Oh,
I'll ask
I
my
thought of a
question.
better allegory. I was hoping to guess this, but he, given the themes of the movie, I think he was her pimp. But it makes sense, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Yeah.
No, it's
much.
it's not exactly wrong. Boss in a way. Yeah.
He does clean up her messes, for lack of a better word.
He sends her out on the streets to pick
So-
up men, and then when he's done with one of them, like Kevin said, on to the next. Keep the cycle spinning.
We talked about the scene where the motorcyclist, when we first meet him, is that scene of him coming down the winding highway. For me, the other scene that was most visually striking with the motorcyclist is him staring her in the face, like inches apart, looking for, are you still with us, or have you adopted a bit of humanity into your soul? Were there any other scenes like that, specifically with the motorcyclist, that really cut to anyone's core, that was like, I'm scared of this guy, or otherwise?
I mean, when he killed the deformed guy, for sure. Yeah, you could tell, this guy has no emotion whatsoever. As the female is starting to get more emotion, becoming more humanistic, he's the one there that is cleaning up, for sure.
That scene where he takes on the deformed guy was pretty hardcore. That was one that stood out to me. And then also the end scene, or close to the end, where it's him standing in the white, the snow top, and he's just kind of standing surveilling everything. But yeah, that motorcycle guy was he had a lot of pretty cool scenes. He's also, fun fact drop here, he's not an actor at all. He's a world champion motorcycle racer. And
That's
they had
fantastic.
him. They needed him because the roads in Scotland are terrible and rainy, and he was the only one that could do all the treacherous motorcycle riding while they filmed it.
That's pretty awesome.
Pretty cool.
He did a great job.
So the scene that really cut to the core for this whole movie was the scene on the beach with the family and the dog and the baby.
Yeah.
There's so many things we could do to dissect that whole scene, but it was definitely awkward. It was hurt to watch,
Brutal.
but when he goes and cleans up and collects all of the personal gear out of the tent and then just walks straight past the screaming infant, I was like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as cutting to the core, Kelly, that would definitely be the scene that really was just like, okay, there's no humanity in this dude whatsoever.
I think I blocked that out of my mind.
Yeah, man, that was an intense scene. Absolutely intense scene.
It was a lot for sure. Eric, it looked like you were going to say something when we mentioned the baby.
Yeah, so they definitely juxtapose the first screaming baby that was on the beach when people were drowning. The family was drowning, the surfer went after them, and there was the baby left on the beach. And Scarlett Johansson, the female at that point, was just kind of staring at all of them, not really knowing what's going on. What are these humans, freaking out about, basically. And also, she's just like, I need my meal. I was talking to the surfer guy. I needed to lure him back to my lair and provide the human meat to my maker. She pretty much walked past the screaming baby that first time, and then later we see her in traffic, and there's a guy that gives her roses, and he says that, oh, this guy in this other car wanted to give you roses. And then we see that her hand's bleeding, and there's blood on her hand, and then we see that the guy that physically gave her roses was bleeding too. And then she stared at the other screaming baby, and then finally kind of noticed the screaming baby, and it looks like she started to be interested in the screaming baby, basically. And that was definitely her first time kind of starting to feel human qualities.
So to touch on that real quick, I think what that scene definitely represented is while she looks at the rose vendor, I think she realizes that he's hurting himself in order to deliver beauty. And I think that's kind of where that realization of he's willing to put himself in pain in order to, either make a living or to deliver something beautiful to me. And I think that's exactly what turns her on to what you just talked about, that the discovery of humanity in that circumstance. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, very much. There's definitely a clear shift midway through the movie where we go from her being a cold hard alien, like the motorcyclist stays, where she shifts, and even as many stare downs as she can receive, there's something that changes inside of her. Blaze, do you want to talk on... Well, I gave you a hard question before. Do you want a hard question again?
I think they're all hard questions, so go ahead.
What do you think of the significance that the human that really made the biggest impact on her was the man with a facial deformity? What do you think that they picked him to be in that movie specifically signifies?
Put it point blank by the name of the movie. It's called Under the Skin. So, skin beauty is only skin deep, and you found it at the end. Da 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 da. So I think as the alien female, like Scarlett Johansson, she as she's learning human emotion like pity and things like that, I think he is very important to her growth, I guess would be the best word, in that he is such, as society views him, as such a pathetic being that she can't help but take pity. I think pity is like the first emotion that she learns in this movie, and it kind of expounds on that when she takes this guy to the black goo and eventually lets him go. I think he is there to represent her official change, where Eric was talking about, the bloody rose and noticing the crying baby. I think she makes her full exodus of becoming a quote-unquote hunter, and she really wants to become human after interacting with this disfigured man. So I think he's a very important part, and I think it was excellently filmed. And then, as everyone said, how off-putting it was that the motorcycle man kind of just ruined his day. I think that was the first turn. But I also think, as she quickly learns, is that human emotion is much bigger than what she experiences in the beginning, and she can't experience all human emotion. But that's later in the movie. But yes, that guy is very important. Very good scene.
Yeah. So just for the sake of going through the storyline of the movie, after this scene, she kind of runs away and she encounters somebody else. Eric, do you want to touch on what that encounter is like with this man who kind of takes her in and what that means for her?
So she's very distraught after she leaves the house and lets the disfigured man live. I think because she saw kind of some of herself in him. Like, below her skin is something that people wouldn't really find beautiful. He had a hood on when she first met him, and then he took it off, and it was something that humans probably don't find very beautiful, and she figures out this is a very lonely guy, and she feels a connection to him. And then, yeah, obviously she looks in the mirror. She starts to see herself, like, as she actually is, like just an alien in a human body. But then she goes out to that bus and meets that guy. At first, she's very, I think, scared, confused, not knowing what's going on. And then the guy, talks to her on the bus, asks if she's okay. She says, basically no. Takes her back to his house. And this is, human compassion. And she's starting to realize that humans have, like, this great compassion. There's definitely a dichotomy of man in this movie, where there is the beautiful parts of humans and the ugly parts of humans, which we will see later. And we actually already saw at that point, because there were a gang of men that tried to take her out of her van. Either way, this guy, I think, is her first kind of feeling of love, or at least passion of some sort. And he is really there just to, like, he really only cares about taking care of her. That scene where he was carrying her over the puddle into the Scottish castle, that was like her seeing chivalry and seeing that this man can, he cares a lot about her, basically. And then obviously that ends up leading to them making love, and she realizes her genitals don't work. And that's why she shines the light on her vagina. And she's just like, oh, I am not, a human in this sense. I want to make love to this man, but I can't. And that's when she ditches that guy. And yeah, that guy was a very, like, important vehicle for her realization that she can't really be a human in the classical sense.
Yeah, Cole, do you want to touch on that? The viewers can't hear it, but I saw a few facial expressions that you made.
Yeah, I mean, the whole transition of her, realizing that the, like, under the skin of the people was a very, I thought, very well done, especially for how little was physically said throughout the whole film. And she, like, meets the guy with the facial deformity and realizes that there's a lot more to him, and again, like Eric says, kind of has a connection with him, and then goes and she ditches her fur coat and goes for a more pleasant coat, and finds this guy who takes care of her and treats her like a person and doesn't, want to have sex with her and all that stuff. Moving even further beyond that, she then really comes to find another person in the woods who kind of is the opposite of the humanity that she's found, right? So she's found all these people that, from the facial deformity to the guy who just wants to take care of her, and they, she realizes the people that they're eating are actually good and there's a lot to them. And then she meets a person that is quite the opposite, where he is just, seems on the surface like a nice person, but then, under the skin, he's just a monster, right? So it's kind of like that interesting dichotomy between those two scenes and her transition of discovering humanity and all that stuff. I found it, I don't know, it was very good. I found it very enjoyable. Also, the guy with the facial deformity, real life guy, his name's Adam Pearson, and he has they didn't want to use any prosthetics or anything. And he broke his leg on the way to his interview or to his casting. He broke his leg, got hit by a cab, and they hired him. That's why he's got a broken leg in his Black Goo scene where he's limping everywhere.
My
And
goodness.
he has an
I'm
identical
glad that
twin.
you mentioned that.
He has an identical twin that doesn't have the same
Whoa, I did not know
affliction
that.
he does. Yeah, they both have the same condition, but it affects them differently. It's actually a whole deal. So, yeah.
Are they like the twins from Spring
I-
Breakers?
Oh my.
I don't
Not
think
at all.
so. Sorry,
Nope.
buddy. But I guess I had a point that I'm not sure where else we can talk about it, so I'm just going to bring
Yeah,
it up
go
now.
ahead.
I found it very interesting that she was kind of pre-programmed with the street knowledge to when asking her victims, "Are you alone?" or "Are you meeting someone?" or "Are you, finding the most direct way to find that lonesome individual." So it was whether she learned that or it was the aliens instilling that immediately because that's what they needed their hunters to be able to do. I just found that super interesting that it was specific and that she, clearly went through that progression with every person that she was trying to target.
Yeah, I think that they programmed her because they programmed her to drive too. Like she was a very good driver the whole movie. Yeah. But yeah, I think they wanted her to find people that no one would immediately miss them, and it would be easy to dispose of them.
Yeah.
Yes, Cole.
So that they could survive themselves.
So going off of Kevin and her asking people questions and them getting into her van, I made a note that I said this is the worst cash cab I've ever seen. And then I later looked up to see who was all in this movie, and that's when I realized, or I saw the fun fact that none of the men that she lured into the van are actually actors. So if you look at the cast, none of them are actors, and that's because they're just actual people that she lured into the van, just driving around, being Scarlett Johansson, and people just willy-nilly getting in her van, having a good time, and then they find it, and then they ask them if they want to be
camera. Yeah,
they want to be in a
there
movie.
were
love
actual
that.
hidden cameras.
Yeah,
I thought that was cool as hell when I found that out.
Very, very
Really?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, hidden cameras in the
Eric
van.
told me that
Actual hidden cameras.
after we had watched it, and I was like, "Oh, so it's like Borat? Is that what you're telling me?"
Yeah, those reactions were
That's
real.
crazy. What?
Yeah, it's all.
I have to look that up.
Really like that.
Yeah, or rewatch the scenes and just be like, "Holy shit! What would you do if Scarlett Johansson drove up in a van and was like, hey, what are you doing?"
Sign me up, whatever you got going on.
Sorry, I have a girlfriend. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
So two things I want to touch on, but first is it kind of explains the difference of how intentional the sound is throughout the movie before the first Scottish person that she picks up speaks. And it's very intentional use of sound and music, and also intentional lack of sound, and use of just real world things like a alien would be scientifically exploring how sound works maybe on this planet. And then the first time she rolls down her window and speaks to somebody, I was like, what the heck is coming out of their mouth? This is the exact opposite of everything that was set up. And learning it was just some dude, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I turned on subtitles immediately once that guy, she rolled down the window. That guy started talking.
The Scottish people are supposed to have the hardest English accent to understand. So.
I didn't think he was talking English at first.
right. Well, I wrote
Scottish
setting.
accent.
I go, where? USA, Europe, both on purpose? oh, Scotland. Because I saw all of the
Blaze.
English signing and I didn't see anything. I was like, what is this? But now it makes sense.
So I don't know if it was done on purpose or not, because I believe the director is British or from the other side of the pond. But I think for an American audience, I wish this was on purpose. So I don't know. But I think the Scotland accent was purposely used just so we could be put in her shoes of like not understanding, making us feel alien to the language. Because
That's an excellent point, Blaze. I like that.
I like that.
and because can I just say that movie did terrible things for the Scotland Tourism Board. I am not going to that stupid ass country. I can't hear them. It's rainy and wet. No, thank you. But yeah, I feel like it was.
But there's
if it was-
castles. There's castles.
There's castles.
That's where Shrek's from.
There's castles.
You can see Shrek.
Shrek, yeah.
That bastard from Austin Powers, he's there too.
Yeah, well,
And you have hot chicks in vans that'll pick up single men.
that is true.
So-
All right, never mind. They did great. All
We're-
right.
That's the other thing that I wanted to touch on is that she does drive around and pick up these guys. The director said that he wanted to make the movie more about the human experience than a gendered experience. However, in my opinion, he did not avoid that. I think it's very crucial that she is a woman and that she is beautiful. I think a lot of the movie is about what beauty means and our obsession and appreciation of it. Does anyone think that it would be the same movie if it was a man who was the alien instead?
No, I mean,
Picking up woman?
No.
No.
Because women
No,
would definitely
absolutely not.
have way more reservations about getting
that's
in a
why the
car with a
handler
random
is the
man,
motorcycle
so-
guy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like you alluded to, I think the theme is exactly that. That very much is a feminine element to this. Like it's a focus on that part of it for sure. Yeah, no, this movie needs to have her, the protagonist, be a female for sure.
Yeah, it's that reversal of rape culture at the start of women are constantly taught to keep our wits about us and react a certain way if a strange man in a van drives up, but it's very fascinating to see it flipped. Men don't really, especially I guess in Scotland, have to worry about if a girl says, "Are you alone?" Are you asking all these questions that make 100 flags raised for me? They're just like, "Yeah, so my place or yours?" It's fascinating use of that, and the fact that that might not have been completely intentional is very interesting to me as well.
I'll make a point,
Okay.
if we may.
Yes, please.
I really enjoyed the club scene. The whole thing, from the beginning of her intentionally following that one gentleman into being bombarded by the females and not knowing enough about human culture to be able to say no, or why am I being drugged into a club. And I made a note, basically, that says that the club reminds her that she isn't like them, isn't normal, and doesn't belong. And it kind of, that whole scene in general was a very eye-opening scene to kind of differentiate her from not only the humans, but just people in general. Like, it was just kind of one of those things where you could tell that she was super uncomfortable and needed to get out of there, but she was also in that situation because she was looking for food, or that instinct. So I just thought that scene in general was very cool and kind of a crucial changing point on where the rest of it went from there.
Yeah. A question I wrote down for all of you specifically about that nightclub was that Darude Sandstorm playing in the background?
Oh yeah,
Oh, of course.
definitely was. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder why they chose Sandstorm.
Because it's the greatest
Yes.
club
Synonymous
banger
with
of all
clubs.
time.
Would
Yeah,
people
it's
really-
just straight
Yeah.
club? Yeah.
Gets the people
Yeah,
going.
man.
People going.
I mean, come on. If you hear
Yeah, exactly.
Is funny.
yeah.
I want to hear. Okay, so I've gone close view and we've gone through the pieces of the movie and everything, but I'm gonna take it back, zoomed out again. We're gonna go back to the beginning of the movie and the grand, huge alien shapes and everything again. How did we feel about the general pacing, directorial choices, the slow, intentional, lots of Scarlett Johansson staring at herself kind of scenes? How did we just feel about that? Kevin, go ahead.
I will say that it did felt a little slow and long in some circumstances. I find myself notes for like 30 seconds of one scene staring at nothing. Maybe that was also me kind of being a little confused on the whole plot of it up until that point, but there was definitely a feeling of, all right, where are we in this movie and how close are we to the end. It didn't last very long, and it did a good job of continuing to move me, but there was a slight feeling of that while I was watching it.
Yeah, Eric.
I think that I actually kind of like how it was slow moving at the start. I like that we see her driving around. There's a lot of scenes of her just driving around, and it really is a predator seeking prey, like looking out, trying to find victims, and then we eventually kind of get into a slow lull of these very everyday things, like when she falls on the sidewalk, she just lays down there for a little bit before she gets picked up. And it seems like these are mundane details, right? But they have points, a predator seeking prey at the start, but then these mundane, like, niceties that humans do for her are just mundane everyday things that maybe we take for granted, but she is starting to become humanized because of them.
I dig that. Blaze, what do you think about the general pacing of the whole movie?
Yeah, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I agree with both of them. I do feel like certain scenes went on a little longer than maybe, I don't know, the editor fell asleep or something like that. But no, in all honesty, I think, again, this is definitely a movie I'm going to have to rewatch at least one or two more times, because I do think a lot of this stuff was intentional. Just going back on her looking herself in the eyes and, like, just talking to you guys right now, it's like, okay, eyes are a very big theme in this movie. Why? Under the skin, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Stuff like that that I wasn't even thinking about, like, going into this podcast. I do feel like this director, John Glazer, right? Am I saying, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I do think, like Eric said with Enemy last week, everything was intentional in this movie, and there was no crumb that was wasted. There was no wasted moment, even though maybe on my first viewing, some of it felt wasted. So I really can't wait to watch this again. So first time watching it, a little slower pace. Wish the the action and the great sound score would have picked up faster. But for what it was, I feel like there's hit a meeting. So good pacing.
Okay. Cole, I'm gonna get your thought. I'll do one more question for everyone after this, and then we're gonna give our grades. But Cole, my friend in Sci-Fi, I know you surely like action. You love dialogue. You love all these kind of things, right? How did you feel about the pacing?
Well,
Please tell me.
let me lay some facts out for you. First and foremost, I did like this movie, and I do love my action. Like, the beginning was very slow, but I thought it was, like, intentional, and it was good and thought out. But I was waiting for it to pick up. It never did. And, like, towards, like, the bottom of my notes, I just kept writing long drawn out shots. They just kept really drawing shots out, which, like, it builds the, like, kind of like the anxiety and stuff inside of you while you're watching it. But it just, like, almost got to a point where I got, like, a little annoyed because of how long and drawn out and how little dialogue was happening. But they were able to convey a lot of emotion through just watching, through cinematography and stuff. But I looked up the script, the like transcript of all of the dialogue. It was only 14 pages total of the whole thing. Most are in the close to, getting into like the 50s to 70 pages of transcripts of dialogue. Scarlett Johansson, I went through that transcript and I counted every single word that she said, and she only said 467 words through the whole entire movie, which in a movie that cost $13.3 million, she said, for every word she said, it cost $28,480 per word that she said, and then it only made $7 million. So they had a net loss. Every time that Scarlett Johansson said a single word, they lost $13,490. They need more dialogue. They needed, there should have been a crescendo. I liked this movie. I enjoyed it, but the pacing was too slow, and towards the end, I just started falling off. Especially when she was at the scene where she's, discovering that she loves humans and the guy's taking care of her. It was just like a lot of like long, awkward pauses. And, A24 has been the pristine of 90-minute movies. I don't know why this wasn't one of them, because it would have been better. But that's my take.
Yeah, so there's 2 points I want to say before we give our ratings because I feel like these are left unsaid. This was Scarlett Johansson's nude debut, and I feel like the director actually did an amazing job of that scene where she's looking at her nude body, and he was actually very... I feel like the nudity actually served a point in this movie where she was looking at her body like scientifically, like what is this form I'm in? And it could have just been kind of a lustful view of a female body, but I don't think it was at all. Like the way he did it, I don't think it was. Cole?
Going off of like the use of nudity, I thought they did a very good job, and it was very subtle where like, every time she took a guy back to their ship, she, took off a piece of her clothing, was in underwear. She was in her underwear 40% of the movie. Just facts here. But in the one where with the man with the deformed face, Adam Pearson, she got fully naked in front of him, but never did it in front of any of the other people and stuff. And I thought that was an interesting way to almost like subtly show that she liked him or trusted him more than she trusted all of these other victims that were just nameless faces. She actually liked this guy and knew that he wanted to, see her naked and stuff. So she wanted to give him something. And I thought that was interesting how...
Do you think the use of the male nudity was intentional in this film? For anybody who feels like answering that. I know
Yeah,
might be
that
awkward.
can't be an accident.
Right.
There's no way
I don't know.
just...
Okay, if I was reading too much into this, but the guy she killed were Rock Hard, and the disfigured man he seemed a bit more flaccid and like he was actually like looking around. And that was why she probably went fully nude, was because he was questioning himself about
because she
going
was like,
fully
"Am I
into
not
the goo."
hot enough for you yet?" Like,
Yeah,
come
no,
on.
he was like looking around, like questioning, like.
Well, he kept saying
remember,
it was
he
a
pinched
dream.
himself too.
He kept
He
saying
pinched
it was a
himself
dream.
and was just like,
Am
"Is
I
this
dreaming?"
real?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I
So-
feel like when he got there, he kept on like, "Am I in a dream? Like this can't be real."
It's fucking weird.
Yeah, so I was going to
Yeah.
ask. That's interesting, but I do want to
That's
jump
gotta
on to
be
my
the
last
foot
question so
counter.
we can give grades.
I want to
Flaccid
talk
was
about the
their
ending
penis?
too.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this is what you're going to say, but can we talk a little just about the ending and finish that up there?
Yeah, sure.
We're still good
Okay,
on time. Let's go.
Yeah. So I just thought the ending, what I got from it, she falls asleep in that cabin, right? And then we see a superimposed version of herself in the woods. And this is like her soul transcending into the metaphysical, going past her skin, past her body. And then she comes out, the logger or guy that's in the woods tries to rape her, and the music comes back on, the predatorial music that was used every time Scarlett Johansson was luring men back. And so this is showing the dichotomy of man here, that humans can be, because we were just coming out of the scene where she was falling in love with this guy, and now we see the very, very ugly parts of man that are way more like this alien race that she's a part of, And she sees like this dichotomy here, and then, he rips off her part of her skin, and she, starts crawling away, looks at her human suit, and then he lights her on fire. And then, the camera pans up after she's lit on fire, smoke is going up, and I took that as her soul finally transcending past her body into the metaphysical universe, or dimension, basically. That's how I took it.
Anyone else want to touch on that ending?
I mean, I really liked it. I thought that it was an excellent way to kind of close it all out without something you expected, to be honest with you. I really thought that after he ran away, seeing her with the skin ripped, that was going to be the end of it. And then he returned with the gas, and I went, well, that's a human reaction. I can see where that's coming from. And that's not sarcastic. It was kind of honestly like, if you just saw an alien, like, what would you do in that circumstance? But he was also a piece of trash, so I guess what do you have that?
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good ending, honestly. It left it at a great spot. It was just kind of like, that's it. She did or didn't do her goal, but it was just a good ending. I enjoyed it.
And she was fully human at that point, like, where earlier those guys were trying to break into her car or van, and she wasn't scared at all. She just drove away. And then at that point, she was having like a full-on human reaction to what it would be like if someone was trying to rape you.
It's a really good point. I like that, because I wrote down earlier, like, calmly drove away during that scene where she's I was kind of like turned off. Like, how did she not react to that? Because she didn't know any better. And then you're right. By the end of it, she was panicking and all that. So that's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah, Blaze.
Yeah, I'm glad
Cole.
Eric said all that, because
if we were going to talk about the ending, I would have just said I was confused as hell. But I guess it does kind of make sense in the way that Eric put it, that maybe she was transcending who she was, because the most confusing part was, the ending where, like, she gets lit on fire and shit like that, and you don't really know what happens, She is slender black alien lady. But the thing that had me question is the motorcycle man, he couldn't find her. When the whole movie, he couldn't find her. So maybe it's because she, like Eric said, transmorphed into whatever the next higher building. Yeah, there we transcend. Yeah, one of those words. So yeah, I don't know. That ending was like, I don't know. That's one of the things that's gonna have to make me watch it again, because I had zero clue what was going on by the end, and it was like my wife turned into a giant spider.
Cole?
Yeah, I liked the ending. I didn't quite have the same, I guess, reaction as Eric did, where he was, more into like what was happening to her soul and all that stuff. I liked it strictly because I thought the alien design was very cool. I really liked like the matte black, almost like a onyx type alien underneath of the skin that she pulled off. And then like the stunt work of like them lighting that person on fire was very well done, because that was real fire, and that whoever that person was ablaze, and they did a very good job shooting that, and they probably spent half the budget just to burn one person. So I enjoyed the ending. I thought it was not what I expected the ending was going to be at all, and I like it when that happens, and it also kind of like left you wanting to know more and seeing what was going to happen, because there's a lot of things that were unresolved. But I liked it.
Okay. I'm going to give my take. I think that I've kind of kept out of it this whole time, and I think that you all know what's boiling deep under my skin. And I'm not trying to pick on any of you for the things that you named at the ending right here, but here's 3 things that annoyed me the most. 1, her body transmorphized on top of all the trees was the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. I've seen it in PowerPoint. Number 2, you're really going to tell me that the alien design is still a bipedal, human-looking creature with just onyx black skin, wearing skin like that after you showed me at the beginning all of these crazy shapes and colors and these weird words coming out of them. They're really just kind of look like humans at the end. And 3, you're going to really let them burn away and then sit that camera as if I was a 5-year-old filming a campfire up at the sky and let all the ashes come and hit the lens. Like, that's really what you want to do with this, is just let the ash, like, I don't know. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it at all. What do you guys think?
fair.
Did I keep
That's
that
why we have
under my
debate.
skin long enough?
I will specifically comment on the ending shot, because I actually enjoyed it up until the point where it didn't cover the lens with the falling ash. I was hoping that it was going to like black it out, and it would have been
Another
a little
PowerPoint kind of
yeah,
transition.
exactly. Yeah, sure, but a little classier version. I guess I was still thinking about the subject matter more than thinking about the details at that point, but I can see how the rest of the cinematography before that would be disappointing at the end.
Yeah, I figured the aliens could just change their like form to fit skin suits.
Yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
And
a lot of
like
black
to be
goo
fair,
going on. They're
all
just
right.
a bunch of goo boys.
Yeah, when Kelly and I were watching this, we both kind of like pointed out this was like somebody trying to be Stanley Kubrick, but without the perfect cinematography. There were shots throughout.
Little Star
That
Child
had very
action.
good cinematography, I think, but then there were others that fell short, in my opinion.
Yeah, like the ending shot where they pan up, instead of seeing the Star Child, you just see fucking ashes of a dead burnt alien.
I think one of the quotes that I told Eric was, it was Stanley Kubrick without Stanley Kubrick, therefore nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing
You
for
just
me.
get Spring Breakers.
Let's not go
nothing
that
will be
far.
that
Come
bad.
on.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah, no. All right, Blaze,
Let's
we
bring
love
it up
you.
one more time. I want to do my last question for everybody. I'm going to answer it first, and then we're going to grade. So I wanted to ask everyone, and they don't have to necessarily be the same scene, but I think that visuals and emotion were, and also audio, were all very key to this movie, more so than dialogue or great story or some other things that I feel like we're lacking. So visuals and emotion. What was the most visually striking moment, and what was the most emotionally striking moment. For me, I'm going to take the pleasure of going first. Visually striking moment was the first man who was her prey, who was under the water. After the second one falls in, we see what's actually happening to him, and he looks like a plastic bag. And then he implodes. And that was the most visually striking moment for me. The most emotionally striking moment was when our man who had a facial deformity gets in there and she keeps flirting with him. She keeps leading him on and eventually is like, we're going to go back to my place. And he pinches his hand like he must be dreaming. Like, this can't really be happening to me.
The scene that was the most visual and most emotional for me was probably at the 7-minute 30 mark of the movie. Probably, the first scene where we see Scarlett Johansson just completely fully nude. No, I'm just kidding. Although this is the only time she's ever done it. No, I think the most visually striking was actually at the very beginning, not the nude scene, but the motorcycle scene. I thought they shot that where it's like back facing towards him. I really liked that whole sequence of him just riding the motorcycle and the film starting off. I thought that was a very, very cool way to shoot that from the top where he's zipping down through the valley and then is pointing back at him. And then all of a sudden he just stops and walks into a field and picks up a body and chucks it into a van. I really liked that whole motorcycle scene and how they filmed that. And then for the emotional one, it was definitely the brutality with the family, where this whole family have a nice fake day at the beach and it goes tragically. She just sits there, does nothing. And then when the guy who tries to save them gets back, she just kills him, drags the body, and then the guy goes to clean it all up. And the baby's still sitting there hours later crying. No one's coming. He doesn't even acknowledge it, doesn't even look at it, and just walks right past it, just treats it like trash. That really was probably the most emotional scene because it was just so brutal. And the fact that they didn't do anything, so it wasn't them actually acting out any terrible crimes or anything. That was just the lack of interest and care and just complete disregard for human life at all.
Definitely. Those are good picks.
I guess that means
Kevin, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I think the first visually striking moment for me, and I definitely made note of it, was the very first scene where we go into the other world where she's luring him in. That blackness, the water, the entire void of anything but what you're concentrating on is the two human elements in that scene. I thought that it didn't answer any questions at all. It was in fact, it was super mysterious throughout the entirety of it. Were they dying? Were they being trapped? The cinematography aided to the story in that circumstance. And I thought that was really cool, that it visually made me curious and therefore it forwarded the story in my mind. So that was the one point. And then I was originally going to answer the question with Cole's answer that family was the heart-jerking moment. But then I've kind of tailored it to think that at the end, I really thought it was unfair that she was taken advantage of, was attempted to be raped and then burned alive and died. I thought that was just kind of garbage. She was discovering herself and becoming her own and finding out what it meant to be human, and it was just taken away from her in a moment.
She did that to other people, though, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that is fair, absolutely. And that is odd that I feel emotion towards her versus, the people that she took out in the process. So maybe that's part of the story. Maybe it's something about me. I don't know, but there was definitely some emotional value to that for me. And watching her burn at the end was kind of sad.
Eric, do you want to go next?
I think there's two very visually striking moments for me. One is after she fell and the people helped her up, they had a whole kaleidoscope vision. That was really visually striking. And up to that point, it was very dull Scotland kind of colors, aesthetic. A lot of whites, grays, blacks. And then all of a sudden there was that kaleidoscope scene, which I think depicted her seeing the world in kind of technicolor for the first time, seeing more emotions. And then the other scene that was really visually striking was when she was walking into the white fog, and I felt like that was the opposite of the men walking into the black goo. It was her walking into this beautiful white fog and looking around and just being what is this nature that is encompassing me right now? And I thought that was very visually striking. Emotionally striking, yes. I think it was the ending for me. The man trying to rape her, and I think her getting burnt and transcending, I felt like that was very poetic. I think that it's like she kind of lived a full range of emotions in a life, in a way, in the short time we knew her. And then she just went up into the metaphysical dimension, you know?
And Blaze, let's hear from you.
Visually, I really liked the beginning when she's being created from the old alien. I wish I knew what that ant meant that was on her finger. Like, I don't know if it was like first contact with Earth, or I don't know
what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's gotta be more than that, because
Living being.
Because then her first scene on Earth, there's that fly that's trying to escape. So I do think that, like, maybe that has something to... Again, there's a lot of questions that I have about this movie myself, but I do think that the use of insects, again, was very thought-provoking, because I think humanity has a very close relation to insects and insectal social colonies, like ants. So I feel like there's got to be something in there, and like the way it was shot on her finger, the way it was zoomed in, and I don't know, like Warrior Ant. I don't know.
There's a idea, just real quick, that people look at, like we look at ants like they don't have personalities or anything, and they don't have like actual souls or anything, and that's how they are looking at humans at that point.
See, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. That they're just
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Analogy.
Yeah.
You might have nailed that one. But
yeah, it's up in the air, but yeah.
Not just visually though, because I think more importantly, the sound was so great in this movie. I think the most resonating audio for me was whenever the alien hunt music. Like, there was literally, like, I could feel the pressure of the music, and it almost felt like, you know, like really good slasher movie music. You know, like you can like look behind your back and like hope that, you know, she's not trailing you and stuff like that. So I thought the sound was super important, maybe even more important than the visuals. I'd like to see that movie with zero dialogue. The most emotion, I have to say, that beach scene, that was very, very, very hard to watch from beginning to end. And it was acted perfectly by the aliens, and it was acted perfectly by the humans. So, you know, I don't know. I've just always had a sick feeling in my gut when, you know, it involves like babies and like starving and stuff like that. So, yeah, just the whole thing from beginning to end, because it kind of told you what was going to go down. So, I don't think I'd watch that scene again, to be honest. So,
For sure. I think that this is a great time to plug to our listeners the concept of veganism and how we treat animals, and the way that we don't even have a word like humanity to describe them. You know, if we were aliens who came onto their planet. Anyways, I digress. All right, let's get to some ratings.
Anyway.
Cole, you want to give a good rating for this film?
Oh man, I guess I'll go first. I enjoyed this film. It did. Again, I had some problems with it in terms of the lack of pacing, or increasing its pacing, or interest, and all that stuff. I did like it. I thought it had like very good cinematography, and it like definitely made you feel a lot of things without telling you, which is hard to do in movies. Plus, you know, obviously it has Scarlett Johansson, who is amazing, very talented, perfect person all around, great. I'm going to give this film...
Subtle.
I'm going to give it... I want to be higher, but I really don't think... I don't think this is a movie that I'll like go back and watch a lot. So I think I'll give it a C plus 24. That's where I'm going to put it.
Cole, I don't believe that you've never seen any stills from this movie, because you've definitely seen some on r/celeb NSFW.
No, I was blown away that Scarlett Johansson was nude in this movie. It like
you've seen stills from this.
I did not know this was a thing, and it was a pleasant surprise.
Kevin, I want you to go next to someone who didn't know that we were dealing with aliens.
Yeah, right. So while I was watching it, exactly. So that's fun. All right, that point is relevant though, because I still enjoyed it while I was watching it, even though I had no idea what the fuck was going on.
Undoubtedly, on its theater release, there were people in your exact same shoes who came into that theater thinking one thing and going, "What the fuck is going on?"
remember when I read that Showtime description, it's, a voluptuous woman takes advantage of, like, my brain is thinking crazy serial killer, not alien serial killer. Now, looking back at my notes, I realized that the comments about the club and not feeling belonging, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And that's why I actually enjoyed this movie even more talking about it than I did watching it, which is crazy, and I don't think that happens very often in cinema or even in general. So I enjoyed it by watching it, but I really enjoy it now. And I can't wait to watch it again. And I think that's part of why I'm going to give it the rating that I do. I can see why it has a cult classic following. I can see why people are kind of enamored by it, because it really has a lot, and we can talk about it. This is going to be our longest episode yet, because we have a lot to say on this movie, and that's an important part. But I'll cut it short. I'm going to give it a B24. I really did enjoy it, and I can't wait to watch it again, and I will recommend it to my friends just for the sake that it's odd and quirky and fun. So that's it.
Very good. I'm going to slip myself right in here. And as your humble narrator, I feel like I had to put aside my personal feelings about this film in order to give a bunch of good questions, and there's enough to work with that I could ask some good questions. However, I think that it is an amazing concept for a film. I think it was poorly executed. I do not like the atmospheric way that they went about things. I thought that the pacing was borderline annoying because it became so boring for me. And I don't think that I'm a uncreative person who can't see why these choices are made. I just think that they were inappropriate for how fun of a concept we're dealing with here. I didn't appreciate the minimalist soundtrack, or lack of it in a lot of spots. And I'm not anti-pretentious. I think that pretentious can work great for a lot of things. However, this was pretentious in an uncool way. It didn't even pull that off for me. That said, like Kevin said, discussing it with you all, I found a little more appreciation, which is kind of rare to see. And I know that there's more to be drawn at every single thing. It's just the question of if I care to ever watch it again or recommend it to anyone in my life. So all of this said, I'm going to give it a D24.
So you're telling me you're not ever going to recommend Mr. Skin's #1 nude scene of the top 50 greatest celebrity nude scenes of all time is an E24?
Wait, what naked man is that?
Is Google action over here. Google it.
Which naked man is #1 on Mr. Skin in this movie?
All right, wait. We have to put a
the one
not
that
safe
wasn't
for
an
work
erect
rating on
penis.
this
The one that
episode. You realize this, right?
Yep. That was the one.
Yeah.
It's part of the human
Not
body.
safe for work.
God, all of them are going to
More male nudity in film.
Blazer, Eric, I will let you guys both. Whoever speaks
go,
first
Blaze.
goes first.
All right, I'll go second to last. So yeah, I have to agree a lot with Kelly about this. I really, really, really love the concept. I think the visuals were stunning, and I thought that, like she said, like on paper, this is a beautiful idea. But where I detract from Kelly, what I find wrong with this movie is not that it was pretentious. I think it had too many eggs in one basket. Because like I said, I am still like, I saw this movie on Saturday night. And I'm like, oh, this could be a theme. Oh, this could be a theme. Oh, this could be a theme. So I feel like it tried to put so many eggs in one basket and tried to be, the champion of everything. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, this might be a vegan film, like Kelly just said. So now I got to add one more egg to the basket. And it's just like there's too much going on for not enough action going on. And then the other issue that I have with the film is, like I said at the beginning, there was a lot of pretty heavy-handed homages. And the problem with homages is if it's not comparable to how good the original is, then your credibility starts to slack a little bit. So going off of that, I am going to watch it again. I'm probably going to watch it 2 more times at least. I will recommend it to people just because it's one of those movies where I think everyone needs to at least experience it, because I do think it has a lot to say, and it has a lot to say to everyone. So, given that, I am going to give it a C-24, and that's with the caveat that I'm going to watch it again, and it'll probably go up a little bit more. I'll probably end up at like a B-, B24.
I'm going to start out saying, something that we haven't said yet. I think Scarlett Johansson was absolutely amazing in this. Her acting...
I said that already.
Slowly going from... I guess Cole said it. All right. Her acting slowly going from, like, this unemotional alien into a human. It was just stunning, like a stunning portrayal of a character. I loved it. And the cinematography and all of the themes we were talking about, this kind of microscope of the human race, and seeing the dichotomy of, good parts of man and ugly parts of man. I loved the themes and how they portrayed all of them, too. And my only negative of this movie is that, there was definitely some Stanley Kubrick, like, inspiration here, but they didn't quite execute, like, how Stanley Kubrick might have tried to execute this movie. It wasn't as perfect as I would have wanted it to be in terms of some of the framing of some of the shots. Also, what Kelly said at the end, just kind of the ashes falling on the screen. And although I liked the idea of, the female overlapped in the woods, I liked what they were saying there. I think they could have done it in a more artistic way. So for me, I'm actually going to give this a B plus 24. This wasn't as good as Enemy for me, but a bit better than Ginger and Rosa. I think I might have a little more clarity on this film after watching it kind of for a second time. I think I dug pretty... I think a lot of this I've understood a lot more, and I respect a lot of what the writer and director were saying. And, of course, I also love the theme, and I didn't mind the slow pacing. Personally, for me, that's not a huge thing for me in movies. I think I can stick around for it, so...
Also,
all right,
Scarlett Johansson keeping up with her, what do you call it? She played the Japanese lady in Ghost in the Shell. What's that called?
Yeah, she did Ghost in the Shell. She was her. Yeah, she did. She did the voice of the robot on her. She did Lucy. Is that what that one was called?
Yes.
About
The
using
brain.
your whole
It
mind.
was Lucy.
Brain.
Yep. She became like a sci-fi legend.
And is it Johansson or Johansson? I feel like we need to get to the bottom of this.
I've been going Joe.
I've been
I think
going
it's
Joe.
Johansson,
It's Joe.
but... I mean, it depends,
I'll call her whatever
Is it
she
Swedish?
wants. Let's be honest here, guys. Come
Johansson.
on.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with Paul.
You guys will fall right into the Black Lagoon.
Ah, you're right.
I already did. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Love
She
it.
wouldn't have to drive in a van. She could be on like one of those tricycles with a wagon in the back. I'll be like, let's go. Black goo, you say?
All right, I'll end this.
Thank you, everyone, for
End this
listening.
podcast saying more male nudity.
There you go.
A24.